So I wanted to talk about Jacques Schnee. Unlike other characters I give analysis to, I don't actually want to go back and look at every single one of his past appearances and try to find some deeper meaning because quite frankly that's unnecessary and not what I wanted to talk about. Instead, I mainly wanted to focus on his resolution, why it felt so empty, and how it could have been so much more emotional and impactful to the characters as a whole. Because while he's been a thorn in pretty much every single character's side who he's come into contact with, by the time his death comes around, the whole mood of the situation is kinda just, eh. Like, I don't think anyone was really a huge fan of him. Even someone like me, who will almost always take an interest in a character like him, never came to form any sort of grander view of him. He was kinda just a bad person, and that was it. He was a shady millionaire businessman looking to get into politics whose home life was on shaky grounds with a wife who doesn't love him and kids who kind of hate him. Believe it or not, there was never anything much deeper to him, and on top of that, his evil nature didn't feel like there was some greater interesting story behind everything. People like Raven and Adam inherently have this air of intrigue, as if there's a story to be told about their past. But Jacques? Yeah, he's rich. So in Volume 8, his entire on-screen presence was limited to him sitting in a jail cell not doing much, and by the time the end of the volume came about, despite having no reason behind it, when the people of Mantle and Atlas are getting evacuated, Winter tells him that it was Weiss's decision to include him in the evacuations. And one episode later, he's killed. There's no rhyme or reason behind why it happened, it kinda just happens. And I don't know what emotion I'm supposed to be feeling here. Am I supposed to be sad because Weiss was willing to spare his life? Should I be happy because he was a bad person? The scene kinda just happens and moves on. And that's really the problem here, because most people just say, oh, look at all these bad things he was, he's deserving of death. But in reality, however you wind up feeling about his character, if the payoff doesn't seem worth it, then what's the point of doing it in the first place? Jacques didn't try to escape his cell and pull Ironwood's guns on him. He didn't try to throw his children into the ominous pit to save himself. He was just a helpless man in a cell who was killed in cold blood. There's no sense of grander triumph or tragedy that the scene evokes when it easily could have. Working with what the scene already gave us, if context was put behind Weiss's decisions to let him live, then his death could have at least felt tragic. Because as far as we know, the only reason she chose to spare his life is that it's subjectively the right thing to do, and that's boring. When decisions are made based on a flowchart, it lacks any sort of emotion. If the scene with Winter saying that they were going to spare his life was removed, would anything have changed at all? I don't think so what was the point of putting it in? If they wanted his death to feel tragic, they didn't even have to focus on Jacques and develop him, but instead do everything from the perspective of Whitley. We've always been passively watching him by his father's side as he's the only one he ever had. And in Volume 7, when he was arrested, we saw how that depressed him and made the world around him crumble. But after that, he kinda just became a good guy. He started helping out, his personality changed, and that's fine. But you'd expect there to not be so drastic of a change so suddenly. So if they wanted to make Jacques' death feel more impactful, they should have had Whitley constantly expressing concern about him, asking about his well-being, if he's okay, and things along those lines. Whether you believe Jacques is deserving of such concern, it shouldn't matter because Whitley was raised by him. Unlike everyone else in the family, Whitley has a completely different experience with Jacques than except say maybe Willow. If Whitley had been spending his on-screen time doing less random acts of good, but instead speaking about his father, then you'd form an inherent investment in Jacques as a character. It's not about liking Jacques, but caring for Whitley. If they really wanted to go above and beyond, the show could have even painted Jacques as having a side to him that the audience never saw, not attempting to justify the things that we've seen him do in the past, but exposing us to something we haven't. Experiences that Whitley had with him that perhaps allude to a side of him that was capable of being a father. That somewhere within him he did care, or there was a shimmer of good inside of him. Perhaps something like a conversation between him and Willow where he says, "Father asks about her, if she's doing alright," painting the idea that he does kinda care and asks Whitley about her current condition, but their marriage has fallen out so far that he feels that he can't confront her directly himself. And through these vouchings of Whitley trying to re-enter his father back into the picture with a family that's beginning to unite, this would be the reason Weiss told Winter about saving their father. Not because it was the right moral thing to do, but because there was actual emotion and a potential glimmer of hope. Willing to give him an actual chance, teasing the idea to the audience that we've been looking at him all wrong in the same vein many had a despicable view of Whitley in the beginning as well. Had the season been working towards this goal, it would have made Jacques' death feel more tragic and less random for having sat in a cell doing nothing for its entirety. Because just as you're beginning to feel like you're caring about a character, they're taken away. You might not care about the character themselves, but you're more so invested into the others who do care. And the beauty about doing something like this and subsequently killing him is once he's dead, you don't have to prove it. If all this was done and Jacques survives, then you're gonna have to make him a good father. But by killing him, it's all left up to the imagination about what could have been. If the show is so adamant about not giving us a flashback, then it's gotta invest us in other ways. But even so, that's really going above and beyond. It didn't even necessarily have to try and make him seem good and that he can change. Because in reality, they could have accomplished the same result by still focusing on his importance to Whitley. Because Whitley cares about him, and the audience cares about Whitley. Vicariously, you just want him to be happy. You're giving the audience an emotion to latch onto, which is better than nothing. Apathy is the worst emotion you can evoke from the audience because it's not an emotion. Whitley shouldn't have just stopped caring or worrying about him, and now that the season's over, it's gonna have to be a presumption that he died because no one's alive that knows about his death. Winter never came back to save him despite promising to do so, so she didn't see the state of the cells. As far as any of the characters are aware, he was left behind in his cell when Atlas fell. The sense of closure seems pretty non-existent and damn hard to claim now. It won't shock me if they never even address him again as if he never existed. But that's part of the problem with the show. The writers don't want you to like Jacques because they don't like him. So because he represents a bad thing, they treat him with the disdain that he supposedly represents. And that's kind of why his death felt so empty. Jacques by no means is any kind of major player, but it sucks to see such smaller stories get shafted too just because they're not needed anymore. I definitely think other storylines were more deserving of screen time, but considering just how simple this would have been to do, it makes it even more disappointing. But anyway, those are just my thoughts on what happened with Jacques. Do you agree? Any and all thoughts, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.